All right, good morning, and thank you for joining us for our third quarterly seminar presentation for the Great Lakes Rural Opioid Technical Assistance Regional Center funded by SAMHSA. I'm Kelly Cabral, Project Director for the Ohio Youth Resilience Collaborative at Ohio State University. Tapping into Cooperative Extension's strong commitment to healthy individuals, families, and communities, we aim to address opioid and stimulant misuse in rural communities across Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. In many areas, Extension is a key stakeholder that communities look to for leadership, education, and translating research into action. We aim to leverage our deep local ties in rural communities to provide technical assistance in the prevention, intervention, and recovery practices of opioid misuse and related substance use disorders. Our goal is not only to provide educational opportunities, but also to build a toolkit for community resiliency. We invite all participants to send us a resource or a tool related to today's topic if you feel inspired. We will disseminate the toolkit after the seminar so that we all may become better practitioners with wider and deeper toolkits at the ready. We are continuing to build on the learning from our prior seminars and will continue to weave themes of prevention, community, resilience, and hope in our future seminars. I hope you'll join us in December for our next learning opportunity focusing on farmer mental health. This is just a brief funding acknowledgement for our work with SAMHSA. And then I also just want to say that the Rhoda RC project promotes the use of affirming person-first language when discussing behavioral health disorders. Non-stigmatizing, recovery-oriented language can help reduce negative bias and promote successful engagement in treatment and recovery. And with that, I'm so pleased to introduce our speaker today. Mallory DeSalle is a licensed mental health therapist and a Mint-certified motivational interviewing coach. Over the last 20 years as a helping professional, Mallory has served in prevention, treatment, and recovery roles. With a passion for creating engaging learning spaces, Mallory invites learners to laugh while they are listening and learning. Mallory is a certified humor professional, faculty member at Indiana University in the School of Public Health, a TEDx speaker, and an Oreo fanatic. She has tasted more than 100 flavors from across the globe. With her partner and 3 teenage children, Mallory lives in Bloomington, Indiana. Mallory, take it away.
Now, everyone, that's all the time we have after my very long introduction. Thank you very much, Kelly, for introducing me. And also thank you, Pam, for inviting me to contribute today. And also just thank you to everyone who decided to log in today. I know that your time is valuable. And so I really appreciate you spending the next hour and 15 minutes together with me. And so I am going to say the words that are my favorite to say on the internet. I'm sharing my screen. So here we go. I'm sharing my screen. Actually, I'm not sharing my screen because I'm going to get my PowerPoint pulled up first, which is also my second favorite thing to say. While I am preparing to share my screen, I would also like to introduce myself in a way that doesn't include all my amazing credentials that Kelly shared with you. And I have all of those credentials, friends, because I am deeply committed to paying renewal fees. That's just it. Thank you for laughing. If any of you found that humorous, I will tell more corny jokes. And if you rolled your eyes, then you can be one of my children, because that's what they do when I tell those jokes. But as Kelly said, I do have 3 kiddos. And another thing that I like to share with folks right away is not only am I a member of the professional community that we work within, but I'm also a consumer of this community. So I am an individual that lives with anxiety and depression. And I manage my mental health in many ways, including going to therapy twice a month and exercising regularly and getting out into nature and laughing a lot. So I hope that you bring your whole self today as we talk about this conversation about difficult and challenging conversations that we can have and how we can use motivational interviewing to help employee success. So let's give this a look-see, see if we can find it. So give me a thumbs up if you see this now. Gorgeous PowerPoint that we worked so hard together to pull up. Thank you very much. So we are going to look at this picture here, and you can see there's a horizon here. And the reason why I have this graphic of this long road with a horizon is because I like to think of this topic as not just meeting people where they're at and helping have challenging conversations, but really also finding a way to meet people where they dream. And that is a different conversation than just talking about where someone is in the moment, especially when they're in this moment of difficulty. We want to talk to them about the future. And if you ever get a chance to be in a long, day-long event with me, you'll hear me say, we usually focus on Pain Town, and I want to invite you to talk about Change Town. And as a preventionist, it's really valuable to me to think about Change Town as a prevention town as well, and my treatment providers as Change Town, and my recovery professionals thinking about Change Town as also a place of prevention. And so Pam asked me earlier today, Mallory, when is it best to have these difficult conversations? And I said, you know, I mentioned to her, if you're already having a difficult conversation, maybe it's already too late. And what I'm getting at is that difficult conversations are something that have built up. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how we can even prepare and prevent for having difficult conversations and the different places that we work. So as you've heard, this is me, and this is all the stuff about me. And if you want me to answer in the Q&A, my favorite Oreos, I am happy to share that with you. So I am going to change it up. I know this is a webinar, and I know it's the morning, and maybe you haven't fully gussied up and our camera ready, but in just a moment, I'm going to take over all the controls of the microphone, and I'm going to ask you all to, and I know this is recording, but it's okay. We're all going to sing, and we are going to sing Taylor Swift, our song. And the reason why we're going to sing that is because it's our song. Okay. So you have to do it. If you don't unmute and do exactly as I say, then we're going to have a problem, and it's not going to be successful. This webinar is going to fail, and you're not going to be ready to understand what we're going to do. So I need you. I implore you. I expect you. I demand and command you to sing. Okay. When I count to 3, we're all going to unmute. I'm going to unmute you because I'm in charge. And then we're going to go. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Thank you. Some of you actually unmuted, and I'm going to high five you for being ready to play along. But don't worry. I'm going to pause. Go ahead and mute yourself once again. And I would like to invite you all to just use the chat box instead and tell me, in reaction form, how did you feel when I told you that you had to sing and that I demanded and commanded it? How did you feel? So Shannon says, no pressure. That's the nervous laughter, right? Who else had some reactions? Yeah. Some of you were feeling unprepared. Some of you were like, listen, that's my jam. I have this. I got this. Others of you were dreading it. Were you ready to log out? Kelly, by the way, if people logged out, I'm really sorry if you lost your participation. Some of you were feeling scared. What's going to happen? Okay, I want you. and Pam says, sadly, I don't even know this song, only the Elton John version. I'm going to give you up top for that one. So this is something I want you all to think about. I want you all to think about as it relates to how do our clients, our consumers, our participants, how do they feel when we take over and we are the experts in the room. Now, some of us really are like, phew, someone I can blame later. Am I right? And others of us are like, no way, there's no way I can do that. Barlow here says, I did not want to do it. Ava says, I was scared. Kayla says, dreading it. Marlo also says, I was actually excited. I love Taylor Swift. So do you hear that we are on this range of emotional reaction from no way to, oh yeah, and somewhere in between? Now, if you're able to use a reaction button at the bottom or even in the chat box, how many of you felt more than one way about it? On one hand, you were kind of nervous, but on the other hand, maybe you were curious, maybe you were confused, but also kind of excited. Yeah, okay. So some of you are using raise hands or high fives or waves. Okay, you can go ahead and take your hands down. That is exactly what I would expect for a significant population to feel two ways. When faced with change, we often feel two ways about change. And what I just did there is I created a difficult conversation. If I made you do something that you felt no success in, no comfort, totally outside of your zone of safety, you would have cortisol, you would be frustrated, and our relationship would be impaired. How much trust would you have for me? On the other hand, people that say, well, this is cool. I have confidence in this. I know what I'm doing here. This is not an uncomfortable conversation. You're ready to go. So we can't have the same conversation or the same expectations with every one of our clients because everyone's going to behave in a different way. But it's very common when we behave in a directive manner that clients and consumers will respond in a way that is counter successful. And they're going to push away from change. Now, with that being said, there are many different ways that we can have conversations. And being directive or using information, being the expert, and in some ways solving problems can be important for us in our prevention, treatment, and recovery roles. With that being said, it is appropriate to use directive communications at some times, but when? I'm going to just invite you in the chat box to tell me, when do you believe that it is most appropriate to give information, be in charge, or in some cases, rescue? What situations might you think would call for that kind of communication? I just invite you to put that in the chat box. So yes, absolutely, Kimberly. If a client says to you, I need information about X, it is our job, and many times, to offer that information. In other cases, we may not be asked for that information, and so it may be less helpful if they're uninterested in the information. And Rebecca and Kelsey are also offering two really important situations: suicidality and crisis moments. So I know this sounds a little glib here, but if I was on the ground and I was injured, would you sit there and say, well, what would you like me to do, Mallory? No, you would take over, you would fix and solve. And if you have a client or a consumer who is talking about suicide, then you need to be directive. Ask yes or no questions, assess for their immediate needs, and in some cases, take action. Being directive is the best solution, the best way to have conversations that are difficult in times of crisis, and sometimes when clients ask you for the information. Now, yes, it can be uncomfortable. And I want you to ask yourself, is this uncomfortable because I feel awkward, or is the conversation uncomfortable? But either way, being directive is essential during crisis and risk or harm, and when our clients want us to be. But in other cases, being directive can lead to a difficult conversation. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to model what this might look like if I myself, as the professional, create potentially a difficult conversation where maybe it wasn't before, just because of how I approach it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spotlight myself, and I'm also going to spotlight my beautiful partner here, uh, Pam. So friends, can we just all give Pam a round of applause? I want you all to know that she saved you all from having to select a volunteer from the audience. So we are grateful to you, Pam. Uh, so Pam, let me tell the audience that you and I haven't rehearsed this, have we? Okay.
No.
No. So what I want you to think about is something in your life right now, Pam, that you are feeling a bit ambivalent about. And what I mean by that is something that you feel more than one way about that maybe you haven't changed yet. Okay. And so my job, audience members, is to fix Pam. I am going to take a directive approach with Pam. And while you're watching, in the chat box, I want you to write your reactions, how you feel, and also how you observe Pam feeling. Okay? Okay, so Pam, what are we here to talk about today?
You know, I have not returned to the gym. I love to swim, Mallory. I'm exercise biking in my back porch, but I really love the workout of a swim, and I don't know, I just can't get it done. Can't get to the gym.
Yikes. It sounds like you whew. Okay. You know this is important, right? To exercise.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's really important. In fact, regular exercise will help you to stay out of risk for other health conditions, Pam. Like, how is your blood pressure right now?
It's a, you know, I don't need medication, but it's not as low as it used to be. It's going up.
Okay, see, so I mean that's definitely, I feel like if you don't start exercising right away, then what's going to happen is your blood pressure is going to go up. And for women, it's really hard to lose weight too. And weight gain and blood pressure are both significant reasons to exercise. So, how close are you to the Y? Do you feel like the Y, I mean, the Y is pretty good.
You know, about 3 miles.
Yeah, okay. So, like, you know what? The Y would be a great place, but they don't have the best hours. So you might want to join the Y, but then also think about finding maybe a support group so that you can find some people to exercise with you, so that you have like a social network as well. Because like socially, if you're supporting the change with other people, then, you know, you're more likely to sustain it, you know? So do you have any sense of where you could get that?
You know, I've seen, you know, those exercise classes in the pool, but I gotta be honest, Mallory, those women, mostly it's women, and they seem to be kind of talking about each other in the pool while they're exercising, which is a little bit annoying to me, but
Right. But if you're a part of that group, then at least you have some friends so that you could, I mean, maybe then you could help suggest new things to talk about, like other ways to sort of not talk about each other. And then you could really, that help you stay active, right? And then you'd make these friends and it'd be good.
that's possible.
Yeah. So Swimming will help you. You can join this group and make these friends, and then you'll have the social. And one of the things that I also know, especially as people are trying to stay active, is if you also make one good choice, you make two good choices. So you also might find yourself wanting to look into other healthy eating habits so that you also stay exercising. So like you can get more bang out of your buck.
Okay, I think I need to start taking notes.
Yeah. YMCA group, and then like Healthy Fresh or something like that. And if you do all of that, do you feel like you would be healthier?
Yeah, probably.
Me too. All right. Great work. Okay. Okay. Can we just all like, I'm gonna say like, I'm so sorry. This is my American Sign Language for I'm so sorry. In the chat box, thank you. Some of you have already started to write some responses in there, but please just make some comments in here. How did you feel like Pam might have been feeling? Yeah, Heather says overwhelmed. Mallory did the most talking. Somebody wrote ick. Uninspired. Yeah. How many of you have ever smiled and nodded just to get somebody to stop talking? Has anyone ever done that? You're just like, yeah. Emily seemed discouraged. She was just agreeing. Yeah. So I'm going to bring up a screen once again, see if this shares as I'm hoping it will. Yep. And then what I want you to do, I think you should be able to do this, friends, from across the area. At the top of your screen, you should see you are viewing Mallory's screen. And I believe you can do this. If you click on that, you should see view options. And after view options, you should see annotate. And if you do that, you could stamp potentially on this. I'm not sure if all of those privileges are on this account.
I do not see annotate when I do that.
None of those are on there. So in here, in the chat box, okay, in the chat box, go ahead and write which of these words do you feel like Pam felt, perhaps? Which of these words do you feel like, yeah, trapped? Yeah, not understood, defensive, not heard, disengaged. Yes, absolutely. Uncomfortable. Yes. You got it. So you hear this loud and clear. And what I want to ask you all, and give me a thumbs up in your reactions, is how much, let me try asking that again. Was the advice that I was giving Pam accurate? Would joining the Y, swimming, help her be active? Would getting a social support help in general, help someone stay more active? Potentially, Linda says. So thumbs up if you think those in general. We know that social supports, exercising more, doing the method with friends, are those research-based successful ways of maintaining health? Yeah, they are. With that being said, do facts alone solve Pam's concern? So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and say, Pam, we pulled up several responses and you got some support from the crowd. If you don't mind sharing, what was that like for you? What was going through your head?
Well, this is a real situation, and truth to power here, Mallory, we did not rehearse this. I do want to go back to the gym and start swimming. I swim outdoors all summer. I live in Minnesota, so I need to get back in there because it puts me in a safe and healthy place. I I felt like I really did need to take out my paper and pencil, and the Y could work, but maybe there's a closer gym that's quieter than all of the stuff going on at the Y, but you wouldn't necessarily even know that was going on in my head while you're telling me to go to the Y, because I'm thinking, well, I want to go to the Plymouth Creek Fitness Center maybe because it's quieter and I can swim by myself and look at the wetland. So that's how I felt. I had a lot going on. I might have looked like I was agreeing so you would stop. I like that gesture, but I was really trying to process some stuff that maybe you didn't even know was going on.
So there was a conversation going on in your head, Pam,
Mhm.
and you were having a conversation that I wasn't privy to.
No.
And the conversation you had was, yeah, but. Mhm. And how comfortable were you with sharing that conversation with me?
Well, I I feel like I was having a conversation done to me, not with me, with just a bit of an edge of judgment, which I've as we started reading in the chat earlier in this call, it makes you feel a little bit defensive because I know I should go to the gym. I know I should eat healthy food. I know that having a workout buddy would help, but I'm still sitting here in my office chair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The behavior change that we were talking about, if it were that easy to fix, you would be up and on the go, and this wouldn't be a discussion.
Yes.
And I saw in the chat box there was a question about note taking, and I'm guessing it's about professionals taking the notes, and unless it's a question about would clients taking notes be efficient. But so I'm going to hold on to that and think about it for just a second. But Pam, what you're saying, it is exactly what we would suspect. Clients taking notes. Yeah. So clients taking notes, actually, I'm going to comment on that, is an action step. And it is an action step that indicates curiosity. It is not an indication step that indicates commitment. And it may be equivalent to a head nod. We don't know yet, because I was not sure that really, in the back of my head, what I was thinking is, let me see how much I can give Pam before she will get mad and stop talking. because I'm trying to sort of over the top do it, right? Sometimes when we are being directive instead of following, and I'm going to unpin you for just a second, Pam, we don't even notice that we are doing it. I will tell you all that a handful of years ago, I was helping a client, not really a client of mine. I was helping a colleague of mine, and she kept coughing, and it's summertime, and she's coughing and she's coughing. And so I got real directive, friends. I said, go to prompt care. Now this is me showing my loving kindness to her. And she went to prompt care, and she called me and she said, Mallory. And I said, yes. She said, I went to prompt care. I said, oh, good. Did you get a Z-Pak? And she said, no, I got lung cancer. Now, I'm going to pause the story right there, because what I want you to know is there are 3 types of communication. One of them is motivational interviewing that I'm going to talk about next. The other one is directive that we just talked about. But the third one is following. And following is something we sometimes need to use in difficult conversations when someone is having extreme reactions, when they are grieving, when they are shocked, when they are sharing emotions. Sometimes we just need to sit back and follow. And in that moment, I want you to put in the chat box, when my friend said, no, I didn't get a Z-Pak, I got lung cancer. Was this a conversation that I should be directive? Was this a conversation that I should guide towards behavior change? guide, or is this a following conversation, one where I just listen? Yeah. You all are absolutely on point. This is a following conversation because she was shocked. She was in trauma. She was expressing herself. And what I want you to know is that even though I am highly trained, that's not what I did. I felt inside myself, crisis, 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 rescue, rescue, rescue. And I jumped in and started acting directive. Here's how I performed that skill. I said, oh my gosh, who at Prompt Care diagnoses lung cancer? That's not their job. Send me those scans. I'll have my husband look at those. And also, do you need a babysitter for the follow-up appointment? You know, I know some pulmonologists. My husband can get you in the best pulmonologist, and you should not be cooking. I will come up with a meal train. Do you hear what I started doing? Offering, fixing, throwing it at her, fixing, because I was listening to my panic, my pain, my upset. And what was happening to her is she was fading away and getting quiet. So I said, gosh, I didn't pick the right way of talking about this. Can I just come over and listen? And I went to her house and we consumed a totally appropriate amount of cookie dough. And I listened. And I listened and I cried and she cried and we hugged and I listened. Because sometimes difficult conversations mean us managing our needs, pausing them, and letting our clients' needs or the other's needs come first. And that's when there's no crisis. That's when there's no behavior change. It's just when there is expression that needs to be held for them. And the next day, my friend called me and said, can your husband look at my scan? I said, yes, absolutely. She said, and can I have the phone number for the pulmonologist that you recommend? I said, absolutely. And she said, and can you stop claiming my daughter on your taxes? And I said, no way. Okay, that was a joke. But then she asked for my enchiladas. When someone asks us to be directive, we respond with directive. When it's a crisis, we respond with directive. When we hear pain, we show up and listen. In between, when we hear someone who is struggling, did you hear it in Pam's voice? She said, I love swimming. I swim outdoors all summer. I love it. It's a part of who I am, the way I define myself. It's how I feel good about myself. And yet right now, it's not working out. I want to do it, and yet I can't do it. I need to do it, and yet I'm not quite taking the steps to do it. That is not for directive. That is not for following. That is for motivational interviewing, where we can help Pam look at it and say, gosh, how can we take this from Pain Town, a complaint she has with some frustrations and some confusions where she feels conflicted, and how can we take and meet her at Change Town? So let's try and share this screen once again. See what happens when I do it. Yay. When things work, I smile. We have to be mindful that when most people listen, it is their goal to fix, not to understand. And so we have to intentionally focus on listening beyond the words to what someone is truly saying they need and how we can invite them to be curious about change. We have to avoid the fixing reflex. And the fixing reflex is something we all have. And you saw it come out inside of me with my friend. You saw it. The fixing reflex, by the way, in motivational interviewing, helping people change. This whole session is based on the 4th edition. Nope, you can't see it, but it was just released in August. It used to be called the writing reflex, but it has been shifted to the fixing reflex because there is no right and it's really about what we want to fix. And so one of the first things that I can share with you about difficult conversations is, if you feel the urge to get directive and it's not a crisis, then probably you are feeling the fix-it reflex, and your client or the person you're speaking with is ambivalent. And so the first thing you can do is sit on your hands and avoid the fixing reflex. Because ambivalence, feeling like I could go this way, or I really want to go both ways, and there's a benefit of going that way, but over there. Ambivalence is normal. Ambivalence is common. That's what I tried to portray initially when I asked you all to sing, that a good number of you were like, but my camera doesn't work. But I will do it, but I don't know the words. We feel more than one way. And we know that the best way to help someone explore both ways of feeling or multiple ways of feeling is to guide. So here's what I'm going to do next. And I'm going to again invite my partner Pam to come up to the front of the classroom, because I am going to introduce her to more of an am I consistent way of being. Now, not just yet, but what I want you to know is, what is motivational interviewing? Motivational interviewing is a way of being. These are all the definitions in Motivational Interviewing, Helping People Grow and Change, 4th edition by Bill Miller and Steve Rollnick. So motivational interviewing is not this theory on change, even though sometimes it's associated with stages of change. It is not just methods and techniques, because the open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, you use those techniques in almost all communication forms. But ultimately, what motivational interviewing is it's a way of doing what you already do. It's a way of speaking with people so that they can hear their own desires or purposes or goals for change and growth. And then you help them to notice them. You help them to hear their own sort of cases for change instead of telling them what to do. Oftentimes, we use this definition. Motivational interviewing is a person-centered communication style for addressing the problem, which is a common one, of ambivalence. So, ambivalence is what we're going to try and work through here with Pam. And to do that, we are going to listen for certain kinds of words. And I'm going to put these in the chat box: desire, ability, reason, and need. And these will be on a slide coming up shortly. But we also are going to listen for commitment, activation, which is plans, and taking steps. And for me, as a helping professional, I am going to use these questions to help guide the conversation from Pain Town to Change Town. And I'm going to hang out with Pam over here and what she envisions about the future. And I'm going to start by asking her why she would want the change, because I want to know what she desires different. I want to hear about what she knows she can do, because I want to know about her abilities. I'm going to ask her what the reasons are. What are the benefits? What's in it for her? And I also want to know how much of a priority this is, how important it is to her. And I'm going to use some reflective listening with Pam as I'm asking her these questions. But before I finish the demonstration, I'm going to ask her about what commitment she might be willing to take in terms of what might the first step be. So I once again am going to spotlight Pam and myself, and I am going to get myself up here so you don't feel alone. There we are. We're in this together after all, Pam. So Pam, once again, thank you for volunteering. And you mentioned that you would like to become a little bit more active. Tell me more about what you would like to be different.
During COVID, we moved the exercise bike upstairs to the back porch. So I have a beautiful view of the garden instead of biking in the basement. And that's been a great incentive. But I really love to swim. I'm a swimmer at heart. The kinds of exercise that people do when they just, the time flies by. And that's what happens to me when I'm in the pool. And I haven't gotten back there. And it just is kind of nagging me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not so much that you need to be active so much as what you're doing, and you really just miss it. You want to be in the pool.
I do.
Mhm.
Well, my last swim at the cabin last year was September 29th and the water was 70 degrees. It gets too cold. I've got to find a better choice.
If it were up to you, it would be outdoor swimming all the time, and that just doesn't work in Minnesota.
No, it doesn't.
Hmm. So, as you're thinking about options for swimming, sounds like you have thought about the lake. That doesn't really fit for you. What other sorts of things do you feel like kind of might be possible if you were to try swimming?
Certainly a move to a warmer climate, but that's not
Yeah,
going to happen.
that would be an option. Yeah.
Installing an indoor pool in my own home, that's not going to happen. So I need to find a gym. I need to go back to a gym and find a pool that's comfortable and not too crowded.
Yeah, so those are two things that your potential pool or place to swim in has to have. It has to be kind of a comfortable temperature,
Mhm.
quiet. What else do you know you might need about this pool in order to make it feel feasible?
You know, my schedule is busy just like everyone else's, Mallory. So what leaps to mind when you ask me that question is I certainly don't want to drive across town in rush hour traffic. So it has to be somewhere within maybe 10 or 15 minutes of
Mhm.
my home.
Yeah, so convenience is also something that's important. And so I have a sense of you're a swimmer, and there's some factors it needs, but why is it so important that you get back in the pool? What are the reasons why swimming is important to you?
I've noticed this on my exercise bike. I have my iPad, and so I'm watching Netflix or I'm reading a book. When I swim, it is just me with my own space.
Mm.
And it's very, very calming and very meditative. I kind of not only swim, but I also kind of just have that moment of reflection when I'm swimming.
Mm. Yeah, it's not just exercise, it's sort of
It's the
meditation.
whole body.
Hmm. So you get some alone time. What else do you enjoy about it?
Um, Obviously, I mean, the fact that it is fitness related. I mean, I work out pretty hard in the past or when I'm in the lake or swimming outside in the summer. And that that seems to be different from biking. And I can't put my finger quite on it, but I have to only attribute it to kind of the mental health part of it that I'm thinking about all of my gratitudes while I'm swimming. I'm thinking about all of my concerns. It gives me that chance to ask myself 3 questions. Am I the right person? Does this need to be said? And is this the time? So instead of jumping in, I have those moments of reflection too, which I don't know why it happens in the pool, but it does, Mallory.
Yeah, it's almost therapy.
Mhm.
Hmm. When you swim, you are the person that you are trying to be.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Mind and body. Yes.
Mhm, mhm. And so knowing that this is, gosh, something that really changes the way you feel day to day, not just physically but emotionally, how important is it for you to sort of try and find a place to do this? If you were to put it on like a scale from 0, not at all, to 10, extremely, where would you put it for importance?
I think maybe a 7.
Mhm. Yeah, a 7. Why so high versus like a 4?
Because I know how I feel when I swim, and also, interestingly enough, as I see the shortening of days and the cooling of temperatures, I know how it's starting to make me feel a little anxious, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to give away swimming until, next May.
Yeah. So it's almost like the priority is getting higher and higher as it gets darker earlier.
Yeah.
You don't want to give it up.
No.
Mm. Gosh, it seems like this is something that's been on your mind for a long time, but right now it's on your mind a lot. It's something you want to sort of do something about. And I'm curious, what seems reasonable for even a tiny step to help you decide what to do next?
Well, like just about everyone else on this call, I don't end my day with a bushel of extra time that I have absolutely nothing to do with. So, time is always the balance that I have, but I like the tiny step. So the tiny step would be, I swam at a closer, gym a few years ago. I wonder if they're still open. I wonder if their pool is still comfortable. I wonder if their cleaning standards are still good. I wonder if they still have, manageable crowd control. So I could use the internet, or I could just get in my darn car and drive, 5 minutes and go there and check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of thinking you're not ready to just like shell out and join a gym just yet. You are ready to be curious about some potential places where you could swim, and you could do that either Google search, or you sound like you're almost more interested in going and seeing it for yourself. Why would that be helpful?
Again, because I certainly want a gym that is clean, that maintains a good pool quality, that has a decent locker room, that has, manageable hours. I know I left one gym because the high school was always kayaking in the pool, or they had swim lessons. And so I want to make sure that the pool is accessible. So while the internet might be helpful, I sort of think I just have to carve out the time, bite the bullet, and go check it out again.
And how how willing are you to give that a go in o- the next week or two?
Well, that's a pretty simple drive by. So I think, I know where it is, and it could certainly fit in on an errand or whatever. I think um, that if I really do want to swim this winter, I've got to get going, and checking it out, is a labor of love. It should be a labor of love, not a burden.
So it's interesting. We talked about how much you love swimming and you miss it and you need it, and how there's a few things that you can do to help get even just a little bit closer to that swimming, whether it's just kind of dropping by and checking out the potential pool. And you sound like it's pretty important, especially as it gets darker sooner. It sounds like you're even willing to give it a go to make that first step in the next week or so. Is there any reason that you think this might not work out for you, or anything that might pop up to get in the way?
No, just the competition for time, putting yourself, it really requires that I put myself to the top of the to-do list, as opposed to all of the other responsibilities and joys and gifts and commitments. So I just have to put myself to the top.
And it's kind of exactly what swimming does for you too. Swimming puts you at the top, and you're kind of deciding, is that what you want to do next? And
It's so ironic, because if I exercise, bike, swim, walk, whatever it might be, I show up better for all of those other to-dos as well. So
Mhm.
I think the
Noticing
time
if
has
you do
come.
it, everything else is going to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even though this is a webinar and it's date stamped, no pressure to check in with me, but I'd love to know if that ends up working out for you, and how and when it does. So
Thank you,
Thank you for
Mallory.
sharing that with me. And if we can all just give Pam some love for being our guest on here. I'm going to remove both of our spotlights again. And I'd like to ask folks to put in the chat box what you observed that time. Yeah, just go ahead and say, what do you think reactions were? And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can give you some potential ideas on what I think might be the reaction from someone who is having this kind of conversation. Do any of these words resonate for how you observed Pam responding? And feel free to borrow these and just add them in the chat box. And you're also invited to add your own words. So I see a lot of safe and progress and cooperative and interested and hopeful and respected. And Pam, while folks are adding that to the chat box, I'd be interested in just your comments. How did this feel for you?
You know, and I just put in the chat that I felt respected. I felt guided, but not necessarily pressured. I did notice that we went from 2 weeks to 1 week, which I thought, okay, I got to adjust that, but I can do with that.
Yeah, that was a slip of tongue, but
Sorry.
yeah. Sorry about that.
No.
I got really excited for you, apparently.
And you know, what I love in the chat is someone else wants to go check out a pool, and for everyone on the call, this really is on my bucket list to finish. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your perspectives and even noticing how that even accidental slip of, in the next week or so versus next 2 weeks or so, how even though accidental, over my head, unintentional, how important it is that we're conscious with being present, and our words are so valuable. And what I wanted to do is, I also want to tell people what's happening behind the screen, behind the curtain, because there's things that I wished I could self-disclose, like my husband's a big swimmer and he's really like depressed right now that outdoor swimming has closed, and he's now at the Y and he says it feels like swimming in soup, and and all these things, because when we're entering into a challenging conversation where someone may not want to talk about change, we think, oh gosh, if only they knew I related, it would be good. But what I want to highlight is that I'm purposefully not self-disclosing because I don't want to make the conversation about me. And it's difficult to balance that because we want ultimately Pam to continue the conversation without worrying about what my voice said. But I want her to have the conversation in her head, have it just continue. Just like it would have the first time. The first time she would have said like, oh, wow, I'm not doing enough. Oh, wow, I need to think about this. Oh, wow, I'd rather do this than that. No. And now she's saying, okay, now what is reasonable? And can I squeeze it in? And so she's continuing the conversation, but I don't want her ever to think that this needs to be about what Mallory thinks. I want it to always be, what can I do? And what we know about difficult or change conversations is that the more we invite change talk in the room, the more it comes. And the more people talk about change, the chances of change increase. And so the way that I was positioning that conversation was very purposeful. Those questions that I utilized were with the goal of creating a conversation where the only hope was for Pam to think out loud about things that usually we don't think about. We don't think about why we want it. We just judge ourselves for not doing it. And there's no helping ourselves when we're sitting in judgment. So instead, what I want to do is employ the spirit of motivational interviewing. And this is another update. This used to be partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. But now in the newest version, it's empowerment. So every time I sit down with a client, that whether it's challenging or if someone is ambivalent, or if I think that I might be employing motivational interviewing, I want to put on my MI hat and partner and demonstrate judgment-free zone and really listen, knowing that they have my respect and that I see value in their presence in the conversation. And ultimately, I want to help them feel like they have the power to do whatever they choose. And sometimes that means not just that I'm going to lift them up, but I'm going to be the step stool if needed. I'm going to get down to wherever they start and let them rise up. I use skills that are not so unusual, such as open-ended questions. I also use affirmations and reflections and summaries. These skills are not nuanced to motivational interviewing, but are strong and person-centered communication styles. And ultimately, when we use these skills, they are all to help build and strengthen change talk so that we can hear more from our client about what they desire, what their abilities are. And ability is really not just about knowledge, but it's also about skill. And it's also about confidence. And confidence is, believe it or not, where I heard Pam wavering. Do I have the confidence that I can get this started? Do I have the ability to carve out enough time to swim? And so if I were ultimately going to meet and discuss it again, I might focus more on what does swimming look like and how much would be beneficial, and how can we build up to where you want to be, versus I want to swim 150 meters, or not 150, 1500 meters. And I'm saying meters because that's what my husband would say, but I have no idea how long that really is because I'm not an expert. But I would want my client to tell me, what does she see swimming as looking as? And it sounds like it's not water aerobics. She wants to get in and do laps. So what does that mean after I listen to DARN? And I know that's a funny acronym, but DARN is the kind of language that helps me know a client is thinking about change. They want to change, need to change, could change, but they haven't decided to change yet. We want to help them strengthen this. So the more I ask them to tell me DARN talk, the more they're going to. And then I'm going to reflect it and they're going to hear the DARN talk. And as much DARN talk as possible, we want their arms to be so full with DARN talk that they need help holding it. So they commit to getting a basket. Or I sometimes think about this as, have you ever gone into a grocery store and said, I don't need a cart? No. So the way Change Talk works is that you go in and you get that loaf of bread and you go, oh, well, I should also get a jug of milk. And then you go, oh, well, I could also get some new ketchup. Oh, and I need some apples. And before you know it, your hands are full and you need a cart, and there's no choice but to get a cart and to start pushing it ahead. And while you're there, you might as well just get all your groceries. That's what we want to do with Change Talk. We want to have their hands so full that there's no choice but to drop it into a cart and to make a commitment to move ahead. Commitment statements, activation, which are planning statements, and taking steps. You know, we already hear that in many ways, Pam is taking steps by thinking through where there is a pool and that she liked it before, so she might like it again. And she's already in my head, I think, thinking of where in the next 2 weeks she could fit it in her schedule. That is taking steps. We can't ask her to plan, hey, will you go check out a gym and find a pool in the next 2 weeks right away? If she says, I'm thinking I want to swim more. We can't say, what's your problem? What's the plan? But instead, we have to build a relationship first. And then once we have a relationship, then we can start to narrow down the topic and focus on where the change might be feasible. And after we do that, we want to strengthen all of the change talk so that there's no choice but to make a plan. These are a step-by-step process, and in motivational interviewing, these are now called the 4 tasks. These used to be called the processes, but the recent update in motivational interviewing now has these as tasks, because though on my screen here they look like one leads to the next, they often do, but these are not always linear. Sometimes planning comes right after engagement. Sometimes you have to evoke and then go back to engaging. Nevertheless, these are 4 tasks that we want to ensure take place before change occurs. Now, motivational interviewing is putting all of these pieces together. It's not just the spirit of motivational interviewing. It's not just the skills. It's not just the tasks, but it's putting all of those things together so that we can create conversations about change. And it really is more like this, where we're just managing the twists and turns of change, trying to get to the heart of the matter and starting with the person first instead of the problem first. So I'm going to show this video. I believe I shared my screen with sound, but let me just stop sharing and share it one more time to make sure that I share it correctly, ensuring that you can hear it. Okay, good. We are on the right page. So here is just a short clip of what we are hoping to do using motivational interviewing.
What did you do to my sign?
I wrote the same, but in different words.
Thanks, love.
We know that our clients, the people that we serve in our communities, whether we are working in prevention or treatment or recovery, we know that there is stigma. We know there is challenge. We know that people come to us with different stories, and this can be quite challenging to help influence change. And one of the ways that we can help to be successful and collaborating with the people that we serve is by using motivational interviewing to not just sit with them in the place where they are, but instead to use our skills to listen to what they're saying or what even is being unsaid, so that not only will we meet them where they are, but we will meet them where they dream. I am really grateful to be able to spend some time on some questions and help give you some additional coaching or feedback together. We have about 10 minutes, but I did want to give you some resources that are very helpful at developing your skills in motivational interviewing, including the new Helping People Change book, which is right here. And also David Rosengren wrote a great practitioner's workbook. He has 2 versions out, which I think are both excellent. And also Jennifer Manuel and Denise Ernst just put out a deliberate practice in motivational interviewing book, which is wonderful. And Colleen Marshall and Annette Nielsen Sogard also put out one for motivational interviewing and leaders, which I think is just a very, very helpful book. But also always check out motivationalinterviewing.org, which is the home of the Motivational Interviewing Network of trainers. And you're also welcome to reach out to me. My website is also posted here below. And I just wanted to note where all of the images came from today's PowerPoint, but I will stop sharing my screen. And I'm happy to answer questions that folks have. You're welcome to unmute and ask or use the chat box. I'm happy to to comment.
I can start off if we're just waiting, Mallory.
Sure.
What if during that conversation I would have said, oh my gosh, I'm just exhausted by the end of the day. I don't know how I can put one more thing on my list to go to the gym now.
Yeah. So what I hear in that statement is sustained talk, and that is a reason why going to the gym or swimming is not going to work. And the truth is that is going to be something that the client is going to say. They're going to say, gosh, I want to swim. Yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, but. So what I would say is, yeah, you are really tired, and if it were up to you, you would swim only when you were rested. So I would want to acknowledge that time and exhaustion is a barrier. And I also would be checking to see if that's the way we resolve your ambivalence. Is the decision that you ultimately don't want to swim, or is it that you would swim if you weren't tired? So the first behavior change may not actually be related to swimming, but it may be about getting more rest so that ultimately at some point you would be able to swim. It would just be sort of helping us narrow our focus with where the first change would be. Is that helpful, Pam?
Thank you. Yes.
Sometimes folks ask me, how old does someone have to be to use motivational interviewing in conversation? Like, can I do this with kids? Can I just adolescents, elderly? Is there mental health guidelines? And you can use this with any age range where they have autonomy to make their own decision. This can be used across all mental health statuses. With that being said, if someone is intoxicated or actively in a state of crisis in terms of their mental health, for instance, if someone is actively in mania, or schizophrenia is having some kind of major symptoms, then it's not necessarily the appropriate method. That would be a directive conversation if there's a physical risk being addressed instead. And can you do this with family? These are all questions I'm asking myself. Yes, and, or yes, but. You decide if this is an and or a but. Yes, and is, yes, you can use this with your family, and it's difficult because you love them so much. You want to be directive. And oftentimes our roles as parents or partners are to guide, and we struggle with that. So sometimes I tend to be either a follower or a directive with my family, depending on what the conversation calls for. So really do your best to be intentional with when you use MI, but make sure that you aren't using it to get someone to do something. That is not motivational interviewing. That is manipulation or sales. And I know no one asked me what my favorite Oreo flavors are, but I just feel like now is an important place to insert that. So I am a traditionalist. I do love a double stuff American Oreo. My least favorite ever is the buffalo chicken and wasabi flavors. Those are both from China. I'm sorry if those are flavors you enjoyed, but I spit them out. And I'm over 120 flavors now. I just got 6 flavors from a market nearby recently, and it was really fun to try them. Are there questions or comments?
Well, thank you, Mallory. If folks have questions that they want to type in the chat or ask privately, feel free to go ahead and do so. I'm just going to share with y'all really quickly before you hop off. We do have some upcoming events that I wanted to share here. So again, we're part of a regional group that's doing virtual trainings. So Reimagining Recovery is a 3-part series. They've already done the first one. But the other two you can hop on for. They have different speakers for each of those. And then we'll be looking forward to our fall seminar on December 12th. And we'll be hearing from Ted Matthews regarding mental health among farmer populations. So if that's a population you work with or interests you at all, please join us. We'll send out more information and save the date for that. And then if you aren't already on our mailing list, you can join our mailing list. I can post this in the chat as well. We'd love to have you learn more about projects throughout the region and upcoming events. You'll stay up to date with that information. And then I did post in the chat a brief survey. So if you have time, please just click on that link. It'll just take you a couple moments to complete those questions. And with that, we thank you for joining us today. So we'll hang out here for a few minutes if folks have questions or thoughts that they want to just work through with Mallory as well. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye, friends. I love the topic for next month. I grew up on a farm, so I can definitely see the value of talking about mental health amongst agriculturalists and farmers.
That's a population that I sort of have most of my experience working with, but not necessarily in the mental health field, more so from like a farming experience and coordinating education programs. But I actually joined this world because I was seeing more of those issues pop up in that population because of the stigma in rural communities and just, so many of those factors that address cultural factors really that address their ability to seek help. So anyway,
Were you a 4-H educator?
I am not.
Okay.
I worked previously for a nonprofit doing farmer education programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Really cool.
Any questions?
Mallory, I really enjoyed this session.
Oh, good.
I
Thanks
wrote
for
down
being
directive.
my partner.
I wrote down directive, following, and motivational interviewing, and I'm so glad that you shared that nuance between motivational interviewing and manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the group? All right.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank
And
you.
thank you again, Pam. I'm going to hop on to an Indiana Echo now. And so I will see you all again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, friends.